Welcome to Queensland Education Science Technicians webinar. Today I'm going to be talking to you about hazardous chemical registers in schools. As part of working in a school laboratory, staff are required to maintain documentation and records in order to manage workplace practices and help keep everyone safe. Registers assist in documenting compliance with legislative safety requirements. This webinar will guide you through setting up and maintaining a hazardous chemical register. In order to do this, it helps to refer to a chemical manifest or stocktake record. I have provided sample documents for your reference. The samples provided have comments to help utilise Excel tools and views. The chemical register file contains both a sample chemical manifest and a sample hazardous chemical register. I have also included a guide to using Excel. In the webinar script provided, there is a list of internet resources for your reference. These will assist you in your role in managing chemicals. Let's go through these now. Although the guideline for managing risk with chemicals in DEET workplaces has been developed to assist DEET employees in meeting legislative requirements, it's still a really good resource for all schools. Inside the document you'll find lots of exemplars and useful links for other resources. And although some of these links are actually out of date, you can usually search the website for the current link. Another one that I use all the time is Safe Work Australia. If you haven't been on this site, then you really need to, because it's really important to know your stuff when you're dealing with hazardous chemicals. Just wait for the computer to catch up with us. So we're just going to do a search for hazardous chemical register to show you how I found the documents to put together this webinar. Unfortunately the computer's a little slow, so just bear with. As you can see, there's quite a few documents that the search will bring up in reference to hazardous chemical registers. The fact sheet is particularly useful in defining what a hazardous chemical register is and whether or not your workplace will need a chemical manifest. It also brings up things to do with hazardous chemicals and safety data sheets. Another way you can navigate around this website is through these tabs up the top here. There's links to the Work Health and Safety Act, the regulations, model codes of practice. The one that you especially want to look at here is to do with hazardous chemicals and harmonisation background to the new laws. Over here, the workplace health and safety information, when the computer decides to cooperate again. Hazardous chemicals is a site that I use quite often. You'll notice that it has information there about global harmonised systems, classification, labelling, safety data sheets, and the HSIS site is quite useful as well for cut-off points for concentrations and the like. So there's quite a bit of information on Safe Work Australia, and I find a lot of it's very easy to read, and its summaries are quite succinct, so you can do it quite quickly without falling asleep. But if you really want a cure for insomnia, you can always look at the legislation and read the Work Health and Safety Act from 2011. It's been updated last year. Or the one that I find more useful is the Work Health and Safety Regulation 2011. So in particular you want to look at Chapter 7, Hazardous Chemicals, and you can use the bookmarks on the side to get to the relevant pages. You can also search for the relevant section up here and it'll take you direct to it as well. So there's information there about hazardous chemical registers as well and what is actually required to be included on those. You may find yourself now asking, do I need a chemical manifest? Well, good management practices will keep chemical quantities to a minimum, and therefore most schools will have chemicals in quantities that do not legally require a manifest to be kept. If you are unsure if your worksite has quantities requiring a manifest or placarding, then check the legislation. Remember that quantities are the total amount stored on the worksite, which may include more than the science department. Despite most schools having no legal requirement to keep a manifest, it is still recommended to assist laboratory staff in their role, specifically in managing stock quantities, chemical storage, risk management processes, accountability, and generating a hazardous chemical register, which is legally required. I've included a sample document of the chemical stocktake that I have developed for use in my workplace. I use this more often than my manifest, as I find it has more information and format that I readily require in order to work efficiently in my role. For example, when a teacher asks if I have a particular chemical in stock, I can tell how much I have in stock, I can tell where it's stored. This is particularly useful for chemicals that aren't often used. I can also tell how old the stock is, and therefore whether or not it will be able to be viable and to be used, or whether it'd be best to refer the teacher to further safety information before considering its use. Now, I can do all this without having to go to my chemical store, which is actually located in another building, so this is quite helpful for me. More recently, I've found it invaluable to have the chemical manufacturer or supplier names on my register. This has been good to source the appropriate current safety data sheet, which complies with the new global harmonised system. But seriously, you don't need all this information on your chemical stock book. This is just something that I've developed for me. So I recommend you developing your own table headers. Every workplace with hazardous chemicals stored on site must have a hazardous chemical register. The mandatory requirements for a hazardous chemical register, as outlined in work health and safety legislation, are a list of hazardous chemicals used, handled or stored, a current safety data sheet for each hazardous chemical listed, and that the register be regularly maintained and accessible. So how do we best create such a document? If you're a keen user of ChemWatch and have developed a manifest within the program, then the program can generate a hazardous chemical register from this information for you. For those who are familiar with programming languages and functions, you could design a database using a program like Access and program it to generate a register. You could also use a word processing program such as Word to record information on a table with specific headers of your choice. I find the management of tables in Word don't have a search function, so it's a lot less efficient using this method. A spreadsheet program such as Excel can be used to record information on a table with specific headers of your choice. Tables in Excel are easier to maintain, especially when you want to sort on a variety of columns, add extra information, use a search function to find a specific chemical or cell that requires editing, print specific parts without affecting visibility of table headers, and quite a number of other things. This is the method that I'll be teaching you in this webinar. I've included a quick reference guide that I've developed to help you use Excel for this purpose. So, in part 2 I'll walk you through creating a chemical manifest. You may like to have Excel open whilst you view the webinar, and remember you can pause the webinar presentation at any time.